Chosen one. The person with the initial J has been hiding this. God revealed it. My beloved child, something has been hidden behind the initial J, and what is about to unfold may completely change the way you understand this person. There is a reason their energy has felt different lately. There is a reason certain moments, words, and unexpected thoughts about them keep returning to you. What they have been keeping inside is not what you would immediately expect, and the truth goes deeper than anything they have allowed you to see. Don't skip, because the smallest detail in this message may be the one that suddenly makes everything connect. The person with the initial J has been carrying something unspoken, something they have repeatedly wanted to reveal but stopped themselves from saying. They may have appeared calm, distant, distracted, or completely normal on the outside, but beneath that surface, an important realization has been growing. And now, what was hidden is beginning to come into the light. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the final revelation changes the meaning of everything that came before it. Here is where the mystery becomes deeper. Jay has not simply been hiding a random thought. They have been hiding how strongly your presence affected something inside them. There was a particular moment when they realized you were not as easy to forget as they once believed. Perhaps it was something you said without realizing its importance. Perhaps it was the way you remained true to yourself when nobody was watching. Whatever the moment was, it stayed with them. They replayed it privately, wondering why your name kept returning to their mind when everything around them became quiet. But there is another layer they have told almost nobody. They have been questioning whether meeting you happened for a greater reason. Certain coincidences began appearing around them at exactly the moments they tried to push those thoughts away. A memory of you would return. A familiar word would appear. Something would remind them of a conversation, a look, or a feeling they thought they had already placed behind them. Don't skip now, because this is where the secret begins turning into something far bigger. The more Jay tried to understand why you affected them, the more they began realizing that what they were feeling could no longer be dismissed as ordinary. And this is the part they have been afraid to admit even to themselves. Jay may have been preparing to tell you something that could completely change your understanding of their silence. Their silence was not necessarily emptiness. Their hesitation was not necessarily a lack of feeling. Behind it was a question they could not answer. Why did you enter their life at exactly the moment you did? They began looking at everything differently, and in that process, something they had buried became impossible to ignore. They realized there was one truth about you they could keep hidden from everyone else, but they could not keep hiding it from their own heart. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because the secret is not simply that Jay has been thinking about you. It is what they finally understood about you, and what they may be preparing to do because of that realization. The next piece changes everything, because there was one specific moment when Jay received the clarity they had been asking for, and after that moment, they could no longer look at you the same way. There was a moment Jay never expected, a quiet moment when everything they had been trying to ignore suddenly became impossible to push away. They had been asking themselves why your presence carried such unusual weight in their heart, why memories of you returned at unexpected times, and why even distance could not completely silence what they felt. Then something shifted. A conversation, an unexpected reminder, or a moment of deep reflection brought your name straight back into their thoughts, and suddenly they understood something they had resisted for far too long. You were never just another passing person in their story. Don't skip, because this revelation is only the beginning. Jay began remembering details about you that they thought they had forgotten, the way you expressed yourself, the moments you showed kindness without expecting anything back, and the strange sense of familiarity they felt around you. What surprised them most was that these memories did not fade. They became stronger. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and what Jay realized next explains why they have been hiding so much. But here is where everything becomes more intense. Jay has been carrying words they almost revealed more than once. There may have been a moment when they nearly reached out, nearly spoke honestly, nearly allowed you to see what was happening beneath their silence, but hesitation stopped them. Not because the truth meant nothing,
but because admitting it would force them to acknowledge how deeply this connection had affected them. They wondered whether you had noticed the same strange timing, the same emotional pull, the same feeling that unfinished words were still hanging between you, and somewhere inside, Jay began wondering whether God was using these moments to make them confront what they had been avoiding. Don't skip. The shocking part is not simply that they have been thinking about you, it is that they have begun questioning whether their feelings carry a purpose they never recognized before. Something inside them keeps saying that there is still something important left unsaid between you, and the longer they remain silent, the stronger that realization becomes. Now listen closely, because one hidden detail changes the entire story. Jay has started looking back at the exact circumstances that brought you into their life, and something about the timing no longer feels ordinary to them. They remember what their life was like before you appeared. They remember what changed afterward. And they remember one particular moment involving you that touched them far more deeply than they ever admitted. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because that memory became the turning point. It made Jay realize they were not only hiding their feelings from you, they had been hiding the truth from themselves. And now, the walls around that truth are beginning to fall. There is something they want you to understand, something they have rehearsed privately but still have not found the courage to say aloud. The most surprising part is that it begins with a confession about the first moment they knew you were different, and once you hear what happened in that moment, their entire behavior may finally make sense. What happened in that first unforgettable moment is something Jay has never been able to fully erase from their mind. It was not necessarily dramatic. There may have been no grand announcement, no perfect setting, no obvious sign that anything extraordinary was happening, but something inside them became still when they noticed you. A feeling of recognition appeared before they could explain it. And afterward, one question kept returning: why did that person affect me so deeply? My beloved child, don't skip, because this is where the hidden truth begins opening wider. Jay tried to convince themselves that the feeling would disappear with time. They stayed busy. They focused on other things. They may even have acted as though nothing had changed. Yet every time they thought the chapter was finished, something reminded them of you again. A phrase. A place. A familiar feeling. An unexpected memory. And slowly, they began wondering whether God was allowing those reminders to bring their attention towards something they still needed to understand. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Jay finally realized that the question was no longer why they remembered you, it was why they had been trying so hard to forget what your presence awakened inside them. Then came the realization they were least prepared for. Jay started comparing who they were before meeting you with who they had become afterward, and the difference surprised them. You had unknowingly challenged something inside them. You made them think differently about sincerity, connection, timing, and what it means to truly value another person. They began noticing qualities in you that they had overlooked at first. Your strength was quieter than they expected. Your heart carried more depth than they originally understood. And there was something about the way you continued moving forward without begging anyone to recognize your worth that stayed in their mind. Don't skip now, because this is where their hidden confession becomes powerful. Jay began realizing that while they were trying to understand you, they were actually being forced to understand themselves. Their hesitation, their silence, and their unanswered feelings were revealing something about what they truly wanted. They had spent so much time protecting themselves from uncertainty that they almost failed to recognize something meaningful standing directly in front of them. And once that realization arrived, they could no longer return to the way they thought before, but there is still one secret Jay has not revealed, and it may explain why their energy around you changed so suddenly. At some point, they imagined what their life would feel like if you were completely absent from it, not temporarily distant, not simply quiet, but truly moving forward without them. That thought affected them more than they expected. Suddenly, all the words they had postponed felt heavier. All the moments they assumed they would have later seemed more valuable. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because this was when Jay understood that silence also makes a choice. If they continued hiding everything, they could eventually watch the opportunity disappear without ever knowing what might have happened. And that realization brought them to the edge of a decision. They began forming a message in their mind, a message more honest than anything they had allowed themselves to say before. But before they could take that step, something happened, something so perfectly timed that Jay stopped and questioned whether it was the confirmation they had secretly been asking God for. And what that moment revealed about you is the part they can no longer pretend they did not see. A strange clarity came over Jay when that perfectly timed moment happened, because it touched the exact question they had been carrying privately. My beloved child, they had been wondering whether everything surrounding you was simply coincidence or whether there was a deeper lesson hidden inside the timing. Then, when they least expected it, something brought your memory back with unusual force. It could have been words they heard at precisely the right moment, an old memory resurfacing, or a quiet realization that suddenly made the past look completely different. Whatever happened, Jay could no longer deny one thing: meeting you had changed something inside them. Don't skip, because this is where their secret takes a surprising turn. They remembered one specific interaction with you and finally understood something they had missed the first time. You had shown them a side of yourself that was genuine, steady, and impossible to imitate. They had underestimated how deeply that moment would stay with them. Now, looking backward, they began connecting pieces they once considered meaningless, and those pieces formed a picture they were not prepared to see. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because Jay suddenly realized that the person they had been trying to understand all this time was also the person who had unknowingly awakened a truth inside them. And then another layer surfaced. Jay began thinking about the things they never said to you, the appreciation they kept private, the questions they never asked, and the moments when they wanted to move closer but allowed uncertainty to stop them. What affected them most was realizing that you may never have known any of this. From your perspective, their silence might have looked simple. But inside Jay, there had been an entire conversation happening for much longer than you realized. Don't skip now, because the next realization shook their understanding of the connection. Jay began wondering whether their hesitation had caused you to believe you meant less to them than you actually did. That thought stayed with them. They started replaying moments when they could have been clearer, kinder, more open, more honest. And somewhere in that reflection, they felt drawn toward prayer and deeper understanding, asking God to help them recognize what was genuine instead of simply following emotion. What came afterward was not a magical prediction or a guaranteed promise, it was clarity about their own heart. Jay could finally admit that your presence mattered, that their silence had lasted too long, and that whatever happened next needed to come from honesty rather than fear. Now the story reaches the point Jay has been avoiding. They know that understanding something privately means very little if they continue hiding behind the same silence. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Jay has been considering a step that would finally expose what they have kept beneath the surface. Not a dramatic performance. Not empty promises. Something much more meaningful, the possibility of speaking honestly and allowing you to decide what those words mean for yourself. They have imagined the conversation. They have wondered how you would respond. They have even considered whether too much time has already passed. Yet one thought keeps stopping them from walking away completely: what if I never tell them? That question has become impossible to ignore. And here is the revelation that changes everything. There is one sentence Jay has wanted to say to you more than any other. They have carried it through moments of silence, uncertainty, and reflection, but they have never spoken it directly. And when that sentence finally comes into the light, you may understand why their behavior has seemed so difficult to read, because those words reveal exactly what they were afraid of losing. The sentence Jay has been carrying is far simpler than you might expect, yet admitting it would expose everything they have tried to keep hidden. You mattered to me more than I ever showed you. My beloved child, don't skip, because those words are only the surface of what they have finally admitted to themselves. Jay remembers the moments when they could have made their feelings clearer, yet chose silence because silence felt easier than vulnerability. But now they understand what that silence may have cost them. They wonder whether you interpreted their hesitation as indifference. They wonder whether you started moving forward because you believed there was nothing meaningful left to wait for. And that possibility awakens something powerful inside them. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Jay has realized that the greatest thing standing between them and honesty was never you, it was their own uncertainty. They were waiting for a perfect moment, a perfect sign, a perfect certainty. But life kept moving, and eventually they understood that some truths become clear only when you finally stop running from them. What Jay discovered next surprised them even more. They started recognizing that what drew them toward you was not simply one conversation, one memory, or one attractive quality. It was the way your presence seemed to reveal parts of themselves they had ignored. Around the thought of you, they became more aware of what they valued, what they feared, and what kind of connection they truly wanted. Don't skip now, because this is where their private realization becomes deeper. During a quiet moment of reflection, Jay stopped asking, "Will this work exactly how I want?" and began asking something entirely different. "What is this experience teaching me?" That question changed everything. They began seeing your connection not as something they could control, but as something that had already helped them grow. And through prayer, reflection, and honesty with themselves, they felt that God was directing their attention toward truth rather than fantasy, to speak sincerely, respect your choices, and stop hiding behind unanswered questions. For the first time, Jay understood that real care does not demand an outcome. It tells the truth and gives the other person freedom to respond. But there is one more detail they have kept buried, and this is the revelation that could explain why all of this suddenly feels urgent to them. Jay recently sensed that you were changing. Your energy seemed stronger. Your attention seemed less attached to what had remained unresolved. Whether they heard something, noticed something, or simply recognized that time does not stand still, the message inside them was unmistakable: you may not remain emotionally available forever. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because that realization brought Jay face to face with the possibility they had avoided imagining: you could enter a new chapter without them. And instead of making them want to control you, it forced them to confront themselves. If they truly had something meaningful to say, they needed to stop assuming there would always be another opportunity. That is why Jay has been preparing themselves differently now. There is another truth behind the sentence they want to tell you, something even more personal than "you mattered to me." It explains exactly what changed inside them when they imagined you walking confidently toward a future that no longer waited for their decision, and once that truth surfaces, their silence will never look the same again. My beloved child, the thought of you moving forward without waiting for Jay created a realization they could no longer hide from themselves. They had mistaken time for certainty. Somewhere inside, they assumed there would always be another chance to speak, another opportunity to explain, another perfect moment when everything would finally become easy. But when they imagined you stepping confidently into a new chapter, they understood that meaningful opportunities cannot always be postponed. Don't skip, because this is where the secret behind Jay becomes much deeper. Their hidden truth is not simply, "I miss you." It is closer to this: "I finally understand what your presence meant after imagining what my life would feel like without it." That realization changed the questions they were asking. Instead of wondering whether they should keep protecting their feelings, they began wondering whether silence was actually protecting anything at all. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. During their private reflection, Jay began seeing that God's guidance does not always arrive as a dramatic event. Sometimes clarity comes through truth, patience, and the courage to recognize what has been sitting inside your heart all along. And for Jay, that truth kept pointing toward one unfinished conversation with you. But something else happened inside them that they did not expect. They stopped thinking only about what they wanted from you and started thinking about what you deserved from them. You deserved clarity instead of confusing signals. You deserved sincerity instead of endless hesitation. You deserved to know that your impact had been noticed, even if the future remained unwritten. Don't skip now, because Jay has reached a point where pretending everything is ordinary has become harder than admitting the truth. They remember how many times they almost spoke. They remember the words forming in their mind before uncertainty swallowed them again. Yet now those same words are returning with greater strength. Jay has been quietly asking whether they are finally ready to become the person who can speak honestly without trying to control what happens afterward. And this is important. Whatever they choose, your worth does not depend on their decision. Their realization belongs to them. Your path still belongs to you. But the hidden secret is becoming clearer. Your presence became a mirror that forced Jay to confront something about themselves they could no longer avoid. Stay close, because the next piece is the one Jay never expected to discover. Something huge is waiting for you. They began tracing everything backward, the first connection, the unexplained hesitation, the memories that refused to disappear, the lessons they learned, and finally the fear of watching you move forward, and one pattern stood out. Every time Jay tried to bury what they genuinely felt, they eventually returned to the same conclusion: honesty was still waiting for them. Not a guaranteed relationship. Not a predetermined ending. Honesty. And that is what makes what comes next so powerful. Jay has begun forming a different kind of message for you, one without games, mystery, or hidden expectations. There is one thing they want to acknowledge about how they treated this connection, and admitting it requires them to take responsibility for their silence. They know they cannot rewrite yesterday, but they can finally stop pretending yesterday meant nothing. And there is one specific truth about their hesitation that they have never revealed, the real reason they kept pulling back whenever they felt closest to opening their heart. Once that reason comes into the light, everything you thought you understood about Jay could suddenly look completely different. My beloved child, the real reason Jay kept pulling back was not because you meant too little, it was because the connection began meaning more than they knew how to handle. The closer they came to admitting what was happening inside them, the more they realized honesty would require something they had avoided for a long time: vulnerability. Jay could manage casual conversations. They could manage distance. They could even convince themselves that silence was harmless. But admitting that another person had genuinely affected their heart was different. Don't skip, because this is where the mystery behind their behavior begins to make sense. There were moments when Jay wanted to move closer, then suddenly became quieter. Moments when they almost expressed something meaningful, then changed direction. Behind that hesitation was a private question: what happens if I reveal everything and nothing stays the same? Yet the surprising truth is that things were already changing inside them. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Jay eventually realized they were not avoiding change, they were only delaying the moment when they would have to acknowledge it. Then came an even deeper realization. Jay began thinking about why vulnerability around you felt so different, and they discovered something unexpected: you had seen parts of them that they normally kept protected. Perhaps you noticed when their words did not match their emotions. Perhaps you understood their silence without demanding an explanation. Perhaps your presence simply made them feel more visible than they were accustomed to feeling. Don't skip now, because this became the turning point. Instead of seeing that feeling as something to escape, Jay began wondering whether it was inviting them to grow. In their private moments with God, they stopped asking for an easy answer and started asking for wisdom, to recognize what was genuine, to release what was only fear, and to become more honest in the way they treated people who mattered. That reflection brought them back to you. Not because anyone can guarantee what another person will do, but because Jay could no longer deny what this experience had taught them. They had been protecting themselves so carefully that they nearly protected themselves away from something meaningful. And once they recognized that, the silence that once felt comfortable began feeling unfinished. Now comes the detail Jay has told almost nobody. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. There was one particular night when they mentally rehearsed what they would say if you were standing directly in front of them with no distractions and no opportunity to hide. They imagined finally admitting that their mixed signals had never represented the full truth. They imagined telling you that your presence stayed with them longer than expected. But then one sentence appeared in their mind that even surprised them: I was afraid you would see how much this mattered to me. That was the confession beneath every other. Confession. And once Jay recognized it, something inside them shifted. They realized courage was not knowing exactly how you would respond. Courage was being truthful while respecting whatever response you chose. Don't skip, because what happened after this realization is where the story takes another unexpected turn. Jay made a private decision about you, a decision not based on controlling the future, but on finally doing something differently. And there is one detail about that decision they are still keeping hidden, a detail that could explain why you may soon notice a completely different side of the person behind the initial J. My beloved child, the private decision Jay made was simple on the surface but enormous for someone who had spent so long hiding behind hesitation. If another genuine opportunity appeared, they would not respond the same way they did before. They would stop pretending the connection meant nothing. They would stop using silence to avoid vulnerability. And most importantly, they would try to speak from truth instead of fear. Don't skip, because there is something about this decision that even Jay did not expect. The moment they made it, they felt an unusual sense of clarity, not because the future suddenly became guaranteed, but because they finally understood what was theirs to control and what was not. They could not control your response. They could not rewrite the past. They could not demand that timing work exactly as they wanted. But they could choose honesty. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. Jay began realizing that perhaps the lesson God was bringing into focus was not about chasing an outcome at all. It was about becoming courageous enough to tell the truth, mature enough to respect another person's freedom, and wise enough to recognize when fear had been making decisions on their behalf. Then something unexpected brought your memory back again, and this time Jay responded differently. Instead of immediately distracting themselves, they allowed the memory to remain. They remembered something small you had done, something you may not even realize they noticed. Maybe it was the way you remained composed when circumstances were uncertain, the kindness you showed when nobody was rewarding you, or the way you refused to become someone else simply to receive attention. Whatever it was, Jay finally understood why that memory had survived everything else. Don't skip now, because this is where their hidden truth becomes even more surprising. They were not only drawn to how you made them feel, they respected something about who you were becoming. And that realization changed the entire emotional weight of the connection. Jay began asking themselves whether they had been so focused on protecting their own heart that they failed to honor yours. They started seeing moments when they could have offered clarity but offered uncertainty instead. They remembered times when you may have wondered what they truly meant, while they privately knew far more than they revealed. That realization humbled them. It made them understand that if they ever approached you honestly, beautiful words would not be enough. Their actions would need to carry the same sincerity as their confession. And now we reach the hidden detail behind their decision. Something huge is waiting for you, so stay till the end. Jay has been thinking about one specific way to show that they have changed, not through a dramatic promise, but through a different kind of presence. They want their next meaningful interaction with you to feel clear instead of confusing, calm instead of uncertain, genuine instead of guarded. But before doing anything, they have been wrestling with one final question: is it too late? That question has become the last wall standing between their realization and their honesty. Don't skip, because what Jay discovered while confronting that question changed their perspective completely. They realized they could not know whether it was too late without first accepting that you have your own path, your own choices, and your own future. And strangely, accepting that truth made their feelings clearer, not weaker. They no longer wanted to speak because they believed you belonged to them. They wanted to speak because you deserved the truth. But there is one more thing Jay has not admitted yet, one realization about your future that struck them during this reflection. And when that realization surfaced, they understood why keeping this secret forever was no longer an option they could comfortably choose. My beloved child, the realization that finally reached Jay was this: your future was never going to remain frozen while they decided whether to be honest. You were growing, learning, becoming stronger, and moving toward opportunities that did not require you to wait for anyone's uncertainty. And when Jay truly understood that, something inside them became unmistakably clear. They could either continue hiding behind silence and accept that you might eventually know nothing about what they had carried, or they could finally allow truth to replace all the unanswered questions. Skip. Because this is where everything they have been hiding begins moving toward one defining moment. Jay started imagining you months from now, more confident, more peaceful, surrounded by people who recognize your value without hesitation, and unexpectedly, that image did not only awaken emotion. It awakened respect. They realized that caring about you meant respecting your direction, even if your direction could not be controlled by them. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. That realization removed one of their biggest excuses. Jay no longer needed certainty about the ending before being honest about what had already been true inside them. But then another question appeared: if Jay finally spoke, what would they actually say? Not the rehearsed version. Not something designed to impress you. The real version. Don't skip now, because the answer surprised even them. They would tell you that meeting you revealed parts of themselves they had been avoiding. They would admit that there were moments when they acted distant because they were overwhelmed by their own uncertainty. They would acknowledge that you deserved more clarity than they gave you. And then they would say something they once believed they would never be brave enough to express: I don't know exactly where this story goes, but I know pretending you meant nothing would be dishonest. That is the transformation happening inside Jay. Through reflection and prayer, they have begun understanding that faith is not permission to invent guarantees about another person's future. Instead, they are seeking the wisdom to act with honesty, patience, and respect. They cannot claim to know exactly what God has planned for either of you. But they can recognize the lesson placed directly in front of them. Hiding forever does not create clarity. Now pay close attention, because the biggest revelation has still not surfaced. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you. Jay has been carrying one memory connected to you that they have repeatedly returned to, and this memory appears to be the reason their feelings became impossible to dismiss. It was a moment when you probably believed nothing extraordinary was happening. You may have said something simple. You may have offered encouragement, remained calm, or simply been completely yourself. But Jay noticed something in that moment that stayed with them. They felt understood without needing to perform. And for someone accustomed to protecting their deeper emotions, that feeling became unforgettable. Don't skip, because Jay has now connected that memory to the reason they kept returning to thoughts of you. It was never merely about attraction or curiosity. They associated you with something they rarely experienced, being able to imagine themselves becoming more honest, more open, and more authentic. And there is one final truth buried beneath that realization, something Jay has barely admitted even privately. It concerns what they would choose if they were given one completely honest conversation with you today. Their answer is no longer what it would have been before, and once that answer is revealed, the entire secret behind the initial Jay will finally come into focus.